Hey everyone, so with how overwhelmingly complicated League of Legends is, we figured we'd make a comprehensive guide to get new players started on the mid lane role. It can be daunting getting started playing a new role or even the game in general, which is exactly why we're making this guide. We'll be going over the basic fundamentals that will help you ease into the mid lane role smoothly. There will be tips on everything from trading all the way to late game macro, which should help you get started winning a lot more games instantly. But before getting into things, here's our question of the day. How many of you watch professional League of Legends? Since we're an improvement-based platform, we figure a majority of our viewers would be interested in the competitive scene. And if you're new, was League's esports scene one of the big reasons you wanted to get into League in the first place? Personally, League esports is one reason I keep playing this game relentlessly. A good pro game always gets me hyped to try new things out in solo queue and improve. I imagine it's the same for a lot of you, or maybe not. Let me know in the comments below, as I'd love to know what percentage of our audience is interested in that part of the scene. Anyway, back to the guide. So, as an aspiring mid laner, you've probably become aware of the two different types of champions generally found in mid. It's not 100% accurate, but for the most part, mid laners can either be classified as ranged mages and melee assassins. To help get you started playing the role properly, we'll be going over a lot of information that is relevant to both these types of characters, while also mentioning some of the differences you'll need to know between them in order to succeed. And what better place to start than with trading during the laning phase. Trading can be incredibly complex at the highest levels of play. Even small micro movements can mean the difference between a great trade and a mediocre one. Thankfully, as a new player, you're not going to deal with insanely good players just yet. All you'll need to get started are some really simple tips that are immediately applicable, which will instantly make you a lot better than most players at trading. For ranged mages in mid, you'll want to keep in mind that most of your trading is going to come from your abilities. More importantly, a lot of the most impactful abilities from mages come from skill shots. Newer players tend to suck at landing their abilities, but you can increase your hit rate exponentially with this following tip. Obviously, to earn gold from minions, you have to last hit. Mana is limited, so most mages use their auto attacks to secure minion last hits to save their abilities for their opponents. Here's all you have to do. Try and keep track of the health pool of your own minions. When you see one of them get low and you suspect your opponent will auto attack it, throw out your skill shot while they're in the auto attack animation. Your opponent has to stand still for the auto, which will greatly increase the chance that you land your ability if you do this properly. This isn't just a mage tip either. It works in every lane and on all sorts of champions, even the melee mid laners we're about to discuss. It's by far the most important trading tip that you need to learn, and we highly recommend practicing it. Alright, if you're just getting into League and you've been watching a ton of guides on how to improve, there's probably something that you keep hearing over and over. You've got to last hit minions consistently and work on getting your farm up as much as possible. And we're not here to tell you different. That is definitely one of, if not the most important things to learn if you want to improve. That being said, that mentality can often cause a lot of melee mid lane players to completely butcher their own lane at the start of the game. You see, melee champions in mid tend to be incredibly weak until they unlock their full combos at level 3 because their kits generally rely on the synergy of all their basic abilities. The biggest issue that we see from newer melee players is taking way too much damage trying to secure every last hit during the early lane, before they're level 3. Yes, last hitting is important, but losing your entire health bar before you can even interact with your opponent is not ideal. Versus ranged champions, you really have to think about which minions are safe enough to walk up for, otherwise you'll be eating a ton of unnecessary damage. The best advice that we can offer you is just to chill until you're level 3. Give up minions that you think are too hard to get without taking a ton of damage. It's literally okay to not get a single last hit until you hit level 3 if it means preserving your health. Once you're level 3, it's significantly easier to win lane. Playing against melee assassins in mid lane takes a fair degree of skill from the ranged player's side. If you've made it to this point of the lane unscathed, then it's usually very easy to, as the melee, get some decent combos on your opponent off. More often than not, newer players will be really easy to kill since they disrespect assassins so much during the lane phase. And that's why you should be completely fine with giving up minions before you're level 3. With the pressure you'll have afterwards, you should easily be able to catch up in farm to your opponent. Before continuing, as a quick reminder, if you want to improve fast and get the rank that you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at SkillCapped.com. We have professional courses by top players, Smurf commentaries where a challenger player walks you through how to climb out of every rank from Iron to Diamond, and we upload tons of new exclusive guides to our website each week. In fact, we're so confident you'll improve using our system that if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund, so there's no risk. What are you waiting for? Check out SkillCapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below. Alright, so after trading, another pivotal part of laning for mid is warding. Mid is by far the most susceptible role in the game to ganks. You're in the middle of the map, which makes things complicated. There's 2 sides that you can get ganked from, and everyone in the game can come for you. Top and bot both have easy access to ganking you, so how are you supposed to live with just a couple of wards? Not to worry, there's a simple way to guarantee your safety in most games without a ton of hassle. What you'll immediately want to learn are autopilot wards. Keeping yourself safe in mid is a high effort struggle. You have to track the enemy jungler, think about what laners are missing and how they may gank, which way they'll come from, where you're positioned in lane, etc. It's a lot. This is a huge amount to expect from newer players. Heck, even most high elo players can't keep track of all that information. Hence, autopilot wards. Regardless of which side of the map you're playing on, these are the 2 wards that you'll want to learn immediately. These wards will give you complete coverage of one side of the river. Keep in mind that for these autopilot wards, the placement is very important. We want to see ganks directly from the river, but also from over the wall. Certain junglers like Kindred, Jarvan, or Graves could catch you off guard from the brush if you don't place the ward properly. Okay, that's part 1 of your safety net. Part 2 is playing on the side of the lane that you've placed your ward on. For example, you placed your ward over here. Then you'd want to play on the top side of the lane, hugging close to that ward. By doing so, you become nearly impervious to ganks. If your opponents try to gank you from the top side of the river, then you can react appropriately by spotting them early and walking away as quickly as possible. At the same time, by standing on the opposite side of the lane from where you don't have a ward, even if you get ganked from that side, you'll have plenty of time to walk away since your opponents would have to cross the entire lane to reach you. Keep in mind that this is obviously not a completely foolproof tactic to avoiding all ganks. But as a really simple to implement strategy, it is incredibly effective and should increase your chances of surviving ganks substantially. And speaking of ganks, let's talk roaming. One of the main reasons a lot of players play mid lane is because of the role's ability to influence the map. You're at the dead center of everything, which means that you will be a part of most of the action that goes on within the game. With easy access to both top and bot lane, being good at roaming is pivotal to your success as a mid laner. Roaming may be a very nuanced concept, but you can be a better roamer instantly by understanding one very important fundamental that all roams are based off of, the mid wave. Keep in mind that experience is incredibly valuable, especially early on. Levels give a bundle of stats and power through ability level ups. Therefore, the relative value of a minion wave early on is much higher than later in the game. Since it takes less experience to level up early, each minion wave has more value during the laning phase compared to, say, 30 minutes into the game when you're already level 16. So, what does this have to do with roaming? Well, it's simple. The very first and most important rule before you roam should be to push the minion wave into your opponent's tower. That's it. By doing so, you'll be minimizing how much farm you'll be missing while you leave lane. When it comes to roaming, there are no guarantees. Just because someone seems vulnerable doesn't mean that you're certain to get a kill. Anything can happen. Therefore, roaming is inherently risky. You're abandoning your lane in the hopes that things go well and that you manage to get some gold. That's why pushing the wave prior to roaming is so important. Take a look at an example of what it looks like if you don't push. You abandon the wave and look to roam. Meanwhile, your opponent crashes the wave into your tower. As you roam, you miss all these minions at tower. It's mostly fine if you just get the kill on your roam, but if you don't, you've set yourself quite behind from all the missed experience. Now, let's take a look at an example where the player does push a wave before roaming. The enemy mid laner is forced to clear the wave under their tower, and then clear the next wave to crash the wave into your tower. That's a long process, which gives you plenty of time to attempt to roam before your opponent can shove the wave into your tower to deny you farm. You can also use that information to try and prevent your lane opponent from roaming. If you've been playing, surely you've had the misfortune of your lane opponent roaming around scoring kills, right? Well, if you want to prevent that, you should try to push waves much more aggressively. It's much less likely that your opponent roams while there's constantly waves at their tower, which reduces the amount of chances that they have to go and kill your teammates. Alright, with the basics of the laning phase covered, let's talk about what you'll want to be doing in the mid and later stages of the game. As a mid laner, it's very important that you understand the distinct zones of the side lanes to understand what you should be doing at all times. There's the collection, neutral, and pressure zones. Their names are pretty self-explanatory. Depending on where the minion waves have collided, you'll want to do different things. When the minion waves have collided in the collection zone, that is your cue to go to that area and collect the enemy minion wave that is fighting your wave there. When the waves are collided in the pressure zone, this creates pressure on your opponents to respond in some way. If they don't, the waves could crash into their tower, dealing damage to the structure and causing them to miss a lot of farm, since their waves are just dying to the tower instead of being last hit. A simple way to look at this is to remember that the zones are reversed for both sides. Your opponent's pressure zone is where you'll be collecting, and your pressure zone is their collection zone. Understanding this concept is critical to your long-term success. As we've mentioned briefly throughout the guide, last hitting minions and farming appropriately is very important, as it's the most consistent way of acquiring gold. You'll need to be consistent in finding sources of farm for yourself. At the start, we said that for mid laners, there's two types of champions, ranged mages and melee assassins. Each of them interact with these zones a little bit differently, so let's break that down. If you're a ranged mage, you'll generally want to be sitting around mid lane with your team. But we highly encourage you to keep an eye out for where the minion waves are in the side lanes. If you see one enter your collection zone and your team is in no immediate danger, then you'll want to quickly transition over there to collect the waves. After that, you ideally want to keep pushing past the neutral zone to try and get the waves to collide in the pressure zone, or as we said, your opponent's collection zone. Once you've done that, you'll head back to your team in mid to group up. If everything went well, remember that the pressure zone should signal to your opponents that it's their turn to go and collect the wave. If they go on and do that while you group in mid with your team, then you should usually have a numbers advantage because someone had to go and collect the wave that you pushed. But what if no one on the enemy team goes to collect the wave? Well, you're going to encounter that a lot, especially when you're up against newer players. That's totally fine, as that's a win for you anyway. The wave will likely crash into their tower, and their valuable gold and experience will be going to waste. So, what's different about melee mid laners when it comes to these zones? Well, keep in mind that ranged mages are typically very weak on their own in 1v1 fights. Champions like Lux, Viger, or Orianna are easily crushed in duels in the side lane. That's why we only recommend pushing slightly past the neutral zone, since going any further is dangerous. And that should answer your question about what assassins should be looking to do. Unlike their vulnerable counterparts, assassins can push waves very aggressively in the side lane due to their great dueling and mobility. Assassins are generally worse than standard mages in teamfights, so in return, this is their big advantage that you should be looking to abuse. So, what do you gain from pushing so aggressively? Well, you're being much more forceful in making someone from the enemy team have to come to deal with you. If no one does, you can actually pressure the enemy towers that are up, since you're able to push this aggressively. And if someone does come to defend and clear the wave, you can use your mobility to flank the rest of the enemy team to try and pincer with your own allies. It is especially potent to do things this way as an assassin, as a flank gives you much better access to the enemy's squishy targets, which should increase the likelihood of your success in a fight. We'd like to take this time to mention that we make a ton of guides based on mid and late game macro, since it is so complex. These are just the basics of the basics, and you'll find that very often things won't go as we described. For example, assassins could know that you're trying to push a wave into their pressure zone and wait in a brush to ambush you as you do so. Or maybe the enemy team has such a strong bruiser that as an assassin you can't even think of pushing past your own collection zone. There's times when you'll be so fed, even as an immobile mage, that you'll be able to push deep into enemy territory and pressure their towers on your own. The possibilities are, of course, endless, which is what makes League such a great and compelling game. It's fun trying to figure out what the optimal strategy is for each specific circumstance you find yourself in, but the tips that we gave you should give you a decent start, and you can take things from there and learn from how things are going in your games. Alright everyone, as we said, this was just an introductory guide to mid. As good as the basics are, there's still a lot more that you can learn to become a better mid laner. If you really want to improve quickly and get much more detailed information, then check out SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Otherwise, you know the deal. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get more premium guides with one goal in mind, helping you become a better player. But we hope that this guide helps you get started on your journey to becoming a great mid laner. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.